Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited that you're able to join us today, and I value your time very much. I'd like to invite you to become a follower and supporter of the Growing Band Director podcast. Now, I'm sure you already listen to the show, and you've got some friends that are listening as well, and we really appreciate that. So if you keep that up, that'd be awesome. But we've now started growingband.com, which is a new website for us, and there's lots of ways you can interact with us. You can follow us on social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube by going on growingband.com and clicking on any of those to follow us. You can also find on there now a new merchandise store, which has the Growing Band Director podcast logo and some sayings on lots of different items on there for men and women. And there's things from t-shirts and sweatshirts to other clothing and accessories. Lots of different options on there with lots of different sizes and colors. Again, a little bit of that money comes back to us at the podcast to help us keep some content going for you. Finally, I'd like to invite you to become a Patreon member. This is a listener-supported show, which means we don't take any ads besides this one. Instead, we rely on listeners like you to keep us going, right? The way to support us is by going to growingband.com and clicking on the Patreon banner. And you can choose either $5 a month, $3 a month, and you'll gain access to the episode notes as well as an audio file of every episode we've done. Among other things, this is where you'll find our repertoire list and all the different repertoire podcasts we've done in the past and will do in the future. So whether it's by clicking on Patreon, following us on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, going to the merchandise store on growingband.com and ordering something for yourself or some family or friends, and also sharing the show with some other people. We really appreciate you being part of the show, and please reach out at any point, and there's a way to do that on growingband.com as well on the Contact Us button. Anyways, let's get to the show. I hope you enjoy it. Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. My name is Kyle Smith, and joining me is my friend and colleague, Jeff Smith. Our mission is to share practical advice and explore topics that will help every band director, no matter your experience level, as well as music education students who are working to join us in the coming years. Together, we will discuss many aspects of a well-rounded band program, but most importantly, we will discuss concepts that help us all improve our own programs each and every day. Always remember the famous quote by Ray Kroc, "When you're green, you're growing, and when you're right, you rot." Let's get started. Trash bag and all.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Are you ready?
Yeah, I think we're going to do like a 3, 2.
Is there like a theme song that's going to like pop on?
That is the theme song. That's
it.
Nice. That's a good one.
I'm really happy to be here with you guys today.
Great to see
We're
you.
happy to be here.
Yep. So I don't know why I'm looking at the computer. I don't need to look at the computer. I think the video's rolling. So
I hope so, right?
yeah. So I'm going to start with a quote. Andy and Lyndsay Boysen are here, and that's not the quote. Hold on. We're going to start with a quick plug. Andy, can you confirm that I get zero compensation for this plug?
Unfortunately, you get zero.
That's fine. I just want the people know that I believe in this. Okay, I think this speaks to everybody. When you rehearse a piece for the first time, how do you identify problems? How do you know which problems to address first? How do you know the most efficient way to fix those problems? These questions lie at the heart of your job, and the most effective teachers are the ones who do it well. In this book, you'll experience Andrew Boysen's innovative approach to developing rehearsal techniques. So anybody looking at the video, the book is called Developing Rehearsal Techniques Through Active Listening, and it's new out through Chose. Will you tell us a little bit about what it is and all that?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know how much time we want to spend on this, but it's really just something I kind of developed out of what I do on a day-to-day basis here at UNH, and just seeing our student teachers go out and kind of the shell shock a little bit of trying to be aware of everything that's going on and still rehearse, and watching them, do their first run through on their first piece and then stop and go, now what do I do? And so I started playing a game with my older students, juniors and seniors, and kind of a little "what would you do" game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd find a recording of somebody's band online, and we would listen to it with a score, and I'd stop after about 20 bars and say, okay, it's your band. What are you going to do? And I started to realize we'd talk about it, like what we were hearing, how we would solve that issue and that sort of thing. And it was a pretty cool way to kind of introduce that. And I started thinking, well, I could do this in a larger scale where we would get feedback from not just me, because I think we all hear things differently and we all approach rehearsal differently. And so as a kid who used to watch Family Feud on my sick days at home, like 11 a.m., you watch the Family Feud while you're lying in bed. And I thought I could do a little Family Feud sort of thing, here, top 5 answers are on the board. What would you do if this was your band? So yeah, I got some wonderful school bands to agree to rehearse a piece for a little bit and then record themselves so that we would hear a band that was an actual band in actual rehearsal.
With a lot of mistakes.
With a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
You were kindly one of those groups, and it was awesome, there were times where your group was a little too good, but, there were mistakes all the way through, and then we would do it at the end of the process when there were fewer mistakes, or it would be different kinds of mistakes, and sent those recordings to about 50 different conductors around the country, and just got their feedback and kind of assembled it into a kind of a little chart, literally like Family Feud, So students, directors can use this now. Just listen to the recordings through the CHOS website and compare their answers to what kind of the experts say.
The standard.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Well, thanks. I hope it's useful for folks. Yeah.
It works really well. I used it with my student, like my teachers and music ed majors in their junior, senior year, and practiced with them in class doing it. And it really made a huge difference when they went out to student teach, and I've watched them the next semester. They actually could get up on the podium and make a correction that wasn't just, let's play that softer, let's play that louder. So yeah.
How much input did you have as he was doing it?
I was not one of the folks that listened, but I loved the idea. I think that is something that we had both kind of commiserated about for years, and just that wanting to do more for students. And when I was teaching high school, I had a lot of student teachers, and just seeing the inability, and no fault of theirs, but just to get on the podium and try to dissect 75 players or 70 like all coming at them at once. It's really overwhelming. So
and to have at least one thing in your head as they're still playing before you stop them.
Absolutely.
To know what you're going to say.
Absolutely. And then learning to hear, to stack things, like to hear multiple things. And so, when you do it with an undergrad class, and it's good for anyone, and not just for undergrads or for new teachers, but even for established teachers that have been wanting to kind of explore a different approach. Maybe we all default to listening for something specific, and this forces you to hear something that you don't necessarily default to. So I think it's great. I have to like it though,
you know? There's that.
So you're both college band directors, college teachers,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So tell them, Lyndsay, you go first.
Oh, me?
Give us your backstory, the abridged version.
The abridged version. I can do it really fast. Yeah, for most of my career as a high school band director, in both New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Had a pretty large program in Massachusetts. Loved every minute of it, but
every minute.
I would say Andy might say that. I really did. And I've gotten involved a lot with NAFME and just kind of music education across the board. So that fed in nicely to me. Ending up in a role at Southern New Hampshire University, coordinating their music ed program and music. And so I don't do as much conducting on a daily basis anymore. I still judge a lot and love conducting, but I tend to teach more about music education and music at this point in my career. So Yeah, that's where
Andy,
I'm
you had a
at.
stint in public
turn.
school, didn't you?
Yeah, not
You had
super
a
long.
stint.
It was a stint.
Mine
there
was
only
like
a couple-
15
yeah,
years.
it
What
only
was
a couple-
yours?
It was only a couple years. Yeah. Yeah. So I taught for a couple years in high school, suburban Chicago, and then kind of moved into the college thing. And I've been here at the University of New Hampshire for, believe it or not, it's just 25 years for me now. That's hard to believe.
I remember it.
Because you
Yep.
remember when I came here.
So, Lyndsay, you mentioned conducting earlier.
Yeah.
I have a note here that I want to do some conducting advice for band directors. So I'll give one.
Yeah.
The worse the band sounds, the more tense you are as the conductor.
Oh, that.
I
for
feel that all
sure.
the time. It's like if the music's good, you're relaxed. If it's not going well, you find yourself all tense. So I focus a lot on, okay, even though it sounds bad, I can still be low stress, right, as a conductor.
Well, I
So-
mean, that is probably the first thing that was the drill when I was doing my master's in conducting. That was probably the first thing my teacher said to me was, if you need to look how you want things to sound, and if you want your players to be relaxed and tension free, then you can't be up there full of tension. So
Yep.
yeah, so you have to project what you want, not just musically, but just, within your body and how you're feeling in the moment. So yeah.
But you watch a band at festival or
Yeah.
whatever, and you're critiquing the band, but in your head you're also critiquing the conductor.
Things
Right.
come up.
Yeah.
I will never say anything about the conductor because I don't think that's my place.
Right.
But I think that there are certainly things that I've witnessed that, could easily help an ensemble. I think a lot of conductors over-conduct, and they want to try to give everything to their students when they really don't need it. And actually, if they're held accountable for, keeping their own pulse and being able to feel the beat and anticipating what comes next rather than a conductor trying to like spoon feed everything to them, I think that causes more harm than good a lot of times. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing that I see, just like over conducting or, some little hiccups that happen where, you're showing subdivisions and things that can be really misleading to your students, and being able to just kind of simplify, relax, and only show what's needed is, I don't know, I think a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, I mean, actually, to take that even another step further, not necessarily that I don't think you necessarily mean that they need to be small or not do very much, but there's a lot of times there's a lot of information coming at the band that's not necessary. If both arms are mirror conducting pulse at a large size, and cueing every entrance, then what's really important to you at any given moment is never coming across the kids. It's a bunch of white noise, kind of.
And they stop
to
paying
expect
attention.
to expect them to respond to that is, there's just no way they're gonna know what's important out of that. Whereas if you can make them responsible for some of that, like Lynn was saying, then when you do show something, it's clear that that's something that's important. And that becomes a much bigger deal then at that point, and much clearer to your group. So there's a greater ability to help your ensemble then if you actually just relax and kind of let things happen a little bit.
One of the nice things too is when you get off the podium and say there's a metronome going or something, but they're just playing themselves and you're walking around and teaching and whatever. Then when you get on the podium and conduct, then there's something actually that's new to the kids. I know Crystal does that a lot.
I think getting off the podium is probably like one of the best things you can do. Honestly, it allows you gives your ears an opportunity to kind of separate yourself from, all right, I got to do all my gestures and look at my score and just get away from it and listen to what's being produced. You usually can hear a lot more of the errors that way. I know with young teachers, that's a really good approach because young teachers aren't necessarily as confident in their conducting skills. And so just stop conducting and let them do it and just listen for what you want to listen for. I think that goes, conducting is not just gestural, because I think a lot of the advice that I would give to directors has to do with like studying your score. I would say that when I judge, I always think it's evident in the directors that have taken the time to really understand the piece and really think about, you know, what needs to happen where and what needs to come out in those places, rather than just we need to get from the beginning to the end in the right tempo. So, and that requires a responsibility of the director to really get in there and learn the piece and learn how to.
Which, let's be honest though, like, I mean, how many scores do you have to have under your fingers or in your head right now?
Like 12.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And that, I mean, when you were teaching
Oh
high
yeah,
school, same.
yeah.
same
It's
deal.
very time
I mean,
consuming.
to expect like perfection on that is not really, like, that's not really possible. And I think we have to understand that. But you can always try harder. You know, you can always try to do more. And that's why I think the further you go on, you can repeat things, or you just get better at analyzing and understanding
it,
music right away.
Right.
Like the
those things
trick
come a little easier.
in simple music, the trick of just looking at the bass clef parts. You know what I mean? Like you can see a lot about harmony just within the low brass.
Yeah. Yep. And those kinds of things can help that process go a lot more quickly. Yeah. But it is telling, I think, when just if we go out and do a clinic with a group or judge, sometimes you can tell right away how much the director actually knows the piece, and how much they've actually been able to communicate that to the students.
So how many times have you seen a band slowing down and their conductor trying to make them go faster by conducting bigger and more aggressively?
All the time.
Right? We always do that, like we're trying to pull the band along and then our shoulders hurt.
Yep.
So if your band is slowing down and you're not using a metronome, what is a better way to conduct that to help them get faster?
You go?
No, you can go.
Okay. No,
You're the one actively teaching conducting class.
Are we talking about
your band tends to slow down.
In the moment of performance, or are we talking about you're noticing this in rehearsals?
Both, but
Okay.
like what can you do as a conductor besides stopping and saying you're going too slow, blah, blah, blah? What can you show as a conductor to help them stay on top of the beat that's not conducting bigger and heavier, which is going to slow them down?
Yeah, that has never worked in the history of conducting that well. I mean, my tendency, honestly, is to stop and to tell them, look, you're slowing down, and say, here's the pulse, go, do it. And I'm not responsible for this. We are all responsible for this. So that's where the not conducting thing for me comes in, is when they understand they have to maintain that pulse. That's the better way to get things. Again, when the responsibility goes on them, and anytime you can get them to listen to each other, I think that's maybe in some ways the biggest key. You know, thinking of your group as a big chamber ensemble, and like you're there to help, but they should be listening to each other. So that pulse, if pulse can be their responsibility, I think that's a huge thing. So that then in the moment, if it's a performance and you start to sense it happen, that's why the smaller can then really work, because it's like focusing in and it's making them focus more on what they're hearing too. So, and
it's like if you want to get their attention by whispering, they have to listen more when you whisper.
Right.
So
I was just about to say that. Yeah. Like if they're used to you looking a certain way and you do something completely different, then it's going to grab their attention. So I would agree that conducting smaller and more specifically in a moment of crisis.
So I don't know if you remember 2010, I went to Texas with Crystal and we did that conducting thing at UNT. And I started the UNT Wind Ensemble and they were half a beat behind me the first 3 times I started. Well, clearly it's me, not them, right? So they were just like, they were really together, but it was behind me. Well, I wasn't using my wrist at all. I just got into this high school thing and whatever, and I was using elbow. And I was taught to kind of like, okay, use your wrist and think about the tip of the baton kind of thing rather than the general pattern. And then it got better. But it was like, how did I not know that? Like, how did I have to travel this many miles to remember to use my wrist rather than my elbow or my shoulder?
But again, that's hard. I mean, when we get into our jobs and we do it on a daily basis and we start worrying about our students, we stop worrying about ourselves.
Who practices conducting as a high school band director?
It becomes really easy for bad habits to form, and I think that's all of us. I mean, we can't help that. I'm sure if we asked my students, they would like do you do this? They would raise their hand. Yep. You
Yep.
do this? Yep. You know, like they would know all my bad habits.
Yeah.
So
what's it like having somebody in the audience as your wife who understands what you're doing, who can critique you afterwards? Hey, you do too much of this or not enough of that.
Oh yeah, he's got his moves that he does. No, I think
you don't really critique that.
no,
though.
I do not do that. I would never do that.
Why does Crystal let you know?
Occasionally. It's been a while. But like I used to I would conduct really, like it got higher and higher and higher.
Oh yeah.
Because my room is a raised step room. So I conducted the percussion up here.
Yep.
Right? And then so it's like now I'm always thinking down.
Down,
like down and smaller.
Yep.
And that
well,
usually,
and I've always been a high conductor as well because I'm short.
Mhm.
And so I've always felt like, and I see that a lot with shorter conductors where they're trying to overcompensate by conducting really, really high. But if we think about what we show gesturally when we're high, it's usually, you know, lighter sounds and like something more delicate. And the things that come from below are usually the big, powerful moments. So it's really hard to show powerful moments really high.
Plus, if you're always up here, that's a lot.
And then
that's
there's
a lot of
tension.
Right?
Yeah.
Which
So
goes back to your first
right.
point there.
So if you really can think about centering yourself and bringing your arms down and then only using that high for those kind of light moments, you know, like it has a lot of, I don't know, power to it, I guess.
So what do you guys appreciate about public school band directors? Like what are things that you're like, wow, it's so great that they can do this, or like, God bless them. You know what I mean? Like, what is it that you think is like cool about what we do as public school teachers?
Well, I think it's like the best job in the world, and I wish I still did it sometimes. I mean, at the end of the day, you're exposing large groups of children and students to not just music, but making music, which is like a whole, I don't know, different kind of opportunity of community and like bonding. And, you know, I think that that's why we do it, because, you know, they want to make music and they want to be there. And the environment is such a social outlet for them too, that, you know, I think we have a lot of responsibility. And I say we, I don't do it anymore, but band directors have a lot of responsibility to create like this sense of community and culture. That's so much more of the job than just getting up on the podium and teaching music. And so that's, I think, what I respect most about just public school teachers or private school teachers, anyone that's running a program of like especially performance-based music, is that they're able to foster that culture with the students. And
yeah, I mean, it's a hard job. Those hours are long, especially if you're doing high school band. But I think in the end, like the number of lives that you change. I mean, I think every one of us, everybody who ends up listening to this, all of us have notes from students at some point, you know, about how much their experience in your band meant to them and that sort of thing. And that's real, you know. That's why I wouldn't be here without having teachers that changed my life that way. So.
And you don't always realize it in the moment. I remember when I left my job, and I was sad to leave my job, and I always knew that there were a handful of kids, but I remember the very last year that I left, the students organized without my knowledge, like a letter writing campaign, I guess you could say. And on the last day, it was just left on my desk. I didn't even know about it. And I went home, and there was probably like 45 letters from students just telling me like how band or music or anything had impacted them. And if, you know, we don't tend to like solicit praise from our students, but in that very like unique moment, I realized like, oh, it's not just me, like it's anyone in my role. Like this is what students are thinking about us, and this is the responsibility I have to them to be able to kind of give them these opportunities. So it's really powerful, I think.
I remember thinking one time that college teachers had it easy because they could play. And I remember saying to you at one point, like, I got to deal with this or whatever. And I remember you saying, it's the same when you get to college. They're just older and they can't sit up or whatever it was.
There's an element of that. I mean, I won't ever complain about my job, though. I have a wonderful job, and I do recognize even just the sheer hours that you put in your position, and you said you have 12 scores in your hands right now. I have 4.
But mine are much simpler than yours.
Okay, but like I do appreciate how lucky I am in some ways to be doing what I'm doing, for sure. But it is just different. That's all.
Yeah.
I think there's pros and cons of everything. There's hard aspects of everything. So
there's a question I hadn't prepared you guys for, but I put on here, and I'm like, we've done like a bunch of literature, and in fact, I think coming up this month, Lyndsay, you'll love this, holiday music for band. There's like 3 different episodes coming out that are like some good grade 1, 2, 3, and 4. Anyway, and there's a bunch we've done so far, but like, what are some of the pieces that jump out to you guys that you just like, whether you've heard them or you've conducted them, kind of within the grade, middle school, high school kind of stuff? Like, what are some pieces that jump out? I didn't prepare you for this.
You didn't prepare me for this, but I have a good answer that kind of goes into.
You can't just say Andy Boysen Jr.
Preparing and all music by Andrew Boysen Jr. and song for Lyndsay, of course, right? No, it kind of goes hand in hand with this preparing your band for a festival that we're going to talk about a little bit later. I think it's really important when you're choosing music to think about why you're choosing each one of the pieces, and that you're providing your students with as much kind of contrast and diversity, I guess, as you can. I think that, that's obviously DEI in general is just a huge push in schools right now. But I think that what I've noticed the most is that we all have a very preconceived, no fault of our own, notion of how to program for festival. Like, I'm going to do the opener, then I'm going to do the slow tune, and then I'm going to do the like multi-movement
focus piece
thing at the end, right? And I don't know that it needs to be like that anymore. And I also think that people gravitate towards a very maybe old school or very predictable list of composers in order to fulfill that festival need. So I would challenge directors to seek out new music. Like, as a judge, as an adjudicator, like, do you know how many times we have like the same piece performed like 4 times in a row on the same day, or the programs are the same year to year to year? Like, not only do your students want to be exposed to different new music, but as adjudicators, we want to hear like new music and different music and well-represented composers, like having women composers, having diverse composers, having different styles of music. And it doesn't necessarily have to be I don't know, the predictable programming that we're all taught to do, I think, at some point in our life. Like, this is what's accepted, but I think that we're veering off from that now, and that people are welcoming the idea of maybe we should just program some different kind of music. And I think students crave that too. So I didn't give you any specifics, but that's kind of my stance on that. We'll go to Andy because he's like the lit guy. He knows all the composers.
No, not at all. But like, I think this is kind of in line with that, and maybe kind of hope I might be going in a different direction a little bit, but I don't. I think finding music that will speak to students and impact their lives, and it's sometimes easy. There are certain resources that are more readily available than others, and so it's easy to go, especially like we talked about this already. The public school teachers are so busy when there's that moment of, okay, I got to program the next concert. We start rehearsal in 2 days. Well, there's certain resources that are more easily accessed, and so those resources are always going to provide the same sorts of response, the same sorts of results, if that makes sense. Not that those are bad, but they're not the only place, and that's where you were talking about all these other places you can find repertoire. And so even now, I think it's funny, the more that's out there on the internet, it's almost like the more we're returning to Because when I started, you get the records, from the publishers, and you listen to the records, or you listen to the cassettes from the publishers, and that's how you hear new. That doesn't really happen. You have to seek it out now, and so it's almost returning to like 80 years ago when you would go to conferences or you'd talk to other band directors. That's how I find out about new things now, almost more than anything. So just to kind of pay attention that way to what other people are thinking is cool, and then decide if you think it would have an impact for your students. Now, if you're talking specific pieces, is that what you?
Sure. Yeah. What are some that you like?
I mean, there's a ton of music I love. I mean,
who's gonna get a shout out today?
Well, so you talked about kind of programming a wide variety. I don't always do this, but I still like to do some of those classic pieces. I think Variations on a Korean Folk Song is one of the most incredible compositional, like the amount of compositional concepts you can teach your students in just that one piece. There's so much you can teach about music in that piece. Persichetti Pageant, love that piece, so there's pieces like that. And now Pageant doesn't always speak to students really immediately. That's a harder, I don't know, it's been a harder sell sometimes, but we just did our summer camp band this year. We did Into the Silent Land, Steve Danu. Super powerful piece. I also think there are pieces out there that may be a little bit harder to, takes more effort on your part to make them happen, but the reward is worth it. Erica Sfano, who taught with us for a while, and you know her well, and she has a couple of pieces with iPad. She has a couple of kind of pieces where the audience can interact and choose where the piece goes next. I mean, these kinds of pieces take work, but they're super rewarding, and they're super exciting for the students because it's such a different performance experience. And then things like bigger pieces, I think sometimes we're hesitant, to program anything beyond 6 minutes. And a band concert is, a bunch of 3-4 minute pieces in a row. And
I remember the year that I did Unusual Behaviors and Ceremonies Involving Drums. It's 22 minutes. And then what I do with it? Circus Bee? No, like a march, and then Australian Upcountry Tune, which was like 2 minutes long.
But was it an incredible experience for your kids?
Oh, yeah.
And I remember you talking about when you did Robert W. Smith's First Symphony.
I did.
Second, which one? I don't remember what it was, but
the Divine Comedy.
Yeah. And I remember you talking about it afterward. There were kids they couldn't believe how proud they were of having accomplished, having performed a 35-minute piece.
It's significant work. Yeah.
That's a different feeling, So I think there is something to that, and there are pieces like that out there. There's a piece I like to do by Robert Rumbelow called Night. Super incredible, powerful piece. I've been on the bandwagon for a long time about Stephen Reinicke's Symphony No. 1, and
I've almost done it twice because you keep saying it. It just hasn't.
It's a really good piece. There's there's extra musical elements there, and it's a 4.5, so it's not easy.
And you need some good soloists.
But the impact is pretty incredible, and there's some great music stuff in there, great concepts to teach and talk about and learn and listen. And
when you talk about not doing a march or an opener, a ballad, and a focus piece, I remember when you did Maine Allstate, one of the years was the first time you did it, or I don't know, have you done it twice or 3 times? I don't remember. The first time you did
twice.
You did, because this was a different way of thinking about it. If you think about tempo, right? Because you did Original Suite by Jacob.
That's the first time I did it.
And then you did Endurance by Timothy Marr, which is, I think, it's one of my favorite pieces.
Great piece.
It's not easy, but it's one of my favorite pieces. And then you end with, what was it? It was your piece, Fantasy on a Theme by Sousa, which they say is a 3.5, but you disagree, correct?
I do disagree, yeah. That's easily a 4.5, yeah.
Hard.
But again, that piece that closes it is fast and slow and whatever.
Right.
When I think of that piece, I actually think of it as a slow piece, if I had to think of it just right away.
Yeah.
But that program was a great way to, and if you think more about emotion and the audience journey, it doesn't have to be fast, slow, fast.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
In fact, we talked to our students about end the concert with a piece that you can't follow. Doesn't matter what it is. If it could be a 25-minute piece that the last 4 minutes are like 3 people playing. But if that's the piece that there's no way you could do anything after it, and that's what you're gonna leave the audience with.
Right.
Yeah.
It's okay to do, yeah. There's definitely that fear that you shouldn't end a concert with something slow or quiet, but that has just as much impact as a rip roaring march or whatever.
Loud enough for you? It's like
Very
my
loud.
band. It's like, no, there is soft. there is loud. We can use both dynamics. A couple pieces and composers I really like that I just threw down here real quick. Gene Milford, especially for the grade 2 range, is really good. Pierre LaPlante, for me, is anything he's ever written is really good. New Wade and Water, that's from the band Quest by Adolphus Hailstork.
Yeah.
I really like that one because it's the Wade and the Water tune, and there's some single 3/8 in there, so kids can learn that, and then it uses the blues scale. So I like that piece. And
I
then
mean, let's be honest, that band Quest series was way ahead of its time. You know, when it started in the 90s, they made that a priority back then. There's some really good, I mean, I do Jennifer Higdon's Rhythm Stand all the time. Great piece. So there's some good pieces in there.
What are some of the other ones from there?
Other pieces from there?
Yeah, Alligator Alley.
Yeah, Alligator Alley
that's
is
probably the,
the
and
other
old churches.
But
I love old
but,
churches.
You know, there's a Tanya Leon piece, and there's a Alvin Singleton piece in there that's
City Rain.
City Rangers, Saymont. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, and then they've gone the other direction and gone to folks like Gunther Schuller and, very high end.
I forgot that Gunther Schuller wrote for them.
Yeah.
The one more piece I wrote that I used at a district band was district grade 2 is Rippling Watercolors by Brian Balmages. Now I know he does FJH, right?
Yeah.
Is he the kind of the head of that?
Mm-hmm.
But I really enjoyed that piece because it explored like more than one chord going together, non-chord tones and things like that at the middle school level. So I thought that was pretty cool.
There's more and more great stuff out there at those younger levels, and that's, I think, again, what Lyndsay was saying about seeking out some of these other resources and websites. And in fact, there's multiple websites devoted just to diverse composers and things like that. There are other places to find things, and that one can lead you into somebody else too. You know, you can investigate a composer and find that they're part of a kind of a collective with a bunch of other composers, and then you can go check out those composers. And a lot of them, you know, we were just talking a second ago about Omar Thomas. I mean, a lot of those folks are kind of working together, and they're writing grade 2, 3, 4 pieces alongside these enormously hard and wonderful grade 6 pieces, you know?
Yeah.
So what was I going to say? I don't know. I was just so mesmerized by what you were saying.
Oh,
I forgot.
Nobody's ever said that about anything I say.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. So when you're like exploring this music, it shouldn't be when you need music, right? You should be doing it.
You should have
6
a
months,
list.
like have it going so you can put on a list and then use it, and then order it 2 months before you need it, and then all those things, right? It's not like, it's September 3rd. I'm going to listen for what we're going to play this year.
Correct. Yeah. And I know that's hard for some folks because they don't know what the strengths of their band is going to be. They don't know how many students they're going to have. They don't know what their instrumentation is going to be, et cetera. But
It should be the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that thinks this way, but I wouldn't not do a piece because I was maybe like missing an instrument or something. And I know that a lot of people get scared about that in festivals because they're afraid that they're going to be, marked down for not having it in the right, the instrument or whatever. But I think for the most part, unless you have somebody that's, I don't know, very passionate about authenticity, I think most adjudicators would be like, thank you for playing this piece, and that substitution is appropriate. And you're a composer, Andy. You would be fine with, like, if somebody did,
Sure.
I don't know, I am, and chose, did some, I mean, that one's probably not the best idea because it's more symbolic, but you know what I mean.
No, but I've had people substitute that part.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that.
And
the only time I've ever been bothered, and it wasn't about my own piece, but when I was judging, and instead of solving the problems, they just ignored that part as if it didn't exist.
Oh yeah.
So then you've got just
That's
like
not a
bars
good
of
option.
accompaniment going by and no melody.
So nobody was playing it.
Nobody
Right.
played it. Yeah.
That's not what I'm suggesting. Yeah, please don't do that. Make sure that the parts are covered in some way.
But a lot of times you have a strong player, just not on that instrument.
Correct. Yeah.
Who can fulfill the same.
Yeah, showcase them. Don't be afraid to not do
I mean,
a
if that
piece
piece, if
because
that piece
of
is going
that.
to have an impact on your band,
Mhm.
that's more important than one.
Whether it's an
little
oboe
element,
solo or a
you know.
flute solo.
Yeah.
Like,
So what's your take on, okay, here's a piece that I think is a stretch for us. I think we can do it. And then at the end, you might be 80%, 85%. Sometimes it's worth doing. Sometimes it's not worth doing. Like, what is your take on that? Like, should we be able to master everything by performance time? Or is it okay to have some pieces that are like, it was a little too hard, but what you learned from it was X, Y, Z. Like,
I know what I think about that because that's what I did all the time. The only
overprogrammed?
No, but maybe a little bit.
I did.
But
I totally did.
you did. I was pretty good about that. But I did make mistakes early on in my career, and I would say when we talk about preparing for festival, one of that is like, don't try not to overprogram your band. I would say the times I took all those risks were on the concerts that were not festival.
Right.
Like, sure, my first concert would be fairly, I'm a huge supporter of like at least three concerts a year. And the first concert tends to be something that's pretty attainable to make sure that they feel good. I like to do festival where it's a push for the students and we're working on a certain kind of skill or mastery of something, but like definitely looking for a clean performance in that, just so that they understand the detail and nuance involved in music making. And then in the spring, it's like, let's do stuff that, not crazy, but definitely push it. And yeah, it might not be as clean, but some of my best memories are playing pieces with, on those last concerts at the end of the year that are just a bit of a stretch, but like the kids are having a blast. So you have to be willing to, I don't know, forgive, depending where you are in the year and the event you're planning for. I think you have to be willing to change your expectation a little bit. And I think a lot of directors can't do that, which then hinders what they can do. So.
And on the other side, under-programming is very valuable, especially these days.
Yeah.
I remember, Andy, your first year at UNH when we did Come Sweet Death. Now, I'm not saying that's an easy piece of music, but that's grade 3.
Yeah.
Right? And you have a college wind ensemble who's also doing Molly on the Shore and whatever.
Yeah.
So why did you remember, like, why did you choose to do that piece?
Still great music,
So many people say, well, my kids need to play whatever level.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter as long as it fits them.
No, I don't think so. Correct. Yeah. I think if you're playing great music, a piece like that, there's still a lot of stuff to work on. And a college student is going to have an amazing experience with that piece, even still. Yeah. So I don't think there's anything wrong with playing. If your band can play grade 4, you don't have to play every grade 4 piece in the world. Like,
you'd play something that's less technical, but maybe more musical or requires a different skill set. I know that when I was, especially later on in my career, like after I had gotten a master's and thought more about just music and how it's constructed and what we're trying to get out of it, I made it my mission to like make my students love slow music. It was like my soul, like that was one of my big like pillars of what you're gonna leave here and you're gonna say, my favorite piece this year was this, and it was like a super slow, like very emotional
Song
piece
for Lyndsay.
I never programmed that for myself, but the idea was that if you think about it, a lot of conductors program all fast music because that's what they think their kids like. And then they're not exposed to anything else. And if they can really, it takes a good teacher and it takes the patience to be able to explain to students why this is so beautiful and why this is, really difficult. It's not just because it's not easy because it's half notes and whole notes and quarter notes. It's hard because we have to do X, Y, and Z. So I don't know.
I heard a clinician once talk about slow music, and he said, okay, I want you to play these 2 lines of the piece. And then when we stop, I want you to write all over the music what part of your life that music makes you think about. And then by the end, there was music. They wrote over all their music. And his quote was, when they finish performing, they're not playing the music, they're telling their life story.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, wow, that's really
cool.
deep.
Yeah.
And I wish I had thought of that.
Well, if there isn't something that's a programmatic element attached to it already, or something that's like a composer has a very clear intention of it, I think that's a perfect way to do it, is creating imagery.
And
in
kids
students'
are
heads.
dramatic.
Absolutely.
They're dramatic. It's just a matter of tapping into that.
But a lot of times, like just feel the emotion, that's a little abstract for them. So if they can think like, oh, I'm thinking of this when I'm playing this, then they can usually make a little bit more of a connection.
Do you have any tricks that you remember from your time? Like,
I would say that would be one of them.
Okay.
I also think that, I think that there's an emotional way to be expressive, and I think that there's like a very kind of tangible technical way to be expressive too. So I think a lot of the expression can come in phrase shape and things like that. So oftentimes I'll see directors that be like, well, you should just like feel that, add more emotion there. And they're like, I don't know, I'm 12. I don't know what to do there. When I could just say, you know what? Don't you think if you crescendoed a little bit here and decrescendoed a little bit here and followed the shape of the line, that might sound a little bit more emotional? And then you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. I don't know. So I think it's easier on a professional end of things or older because they have more life experience to tap into, and music becomes more of an emotional connection for them. Right. But younger kids, you can still make them play musically. You just have to tell
them how to do it.
Yeah, you have to approach it in a technical way, like literally step by step. We're going to crescendo here. We're going to decrescendo here. We're going to release together here, those kinds of things.
I remember a trick that I was taught one time was to listen to a slow piece and then think of somebody in your life who's no longer alive that you miss a lot, right?
Wow.
It sounds kind of morbid, but like it makes you think of that person in a loving way. And then think of a word that symbolizes that person, and then write that word on the piece of music. So when you see the music, you're thinking of that person and you play it sort of a more emotional way. I've never tried that with middle school kids, but it works with high school kids.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe that.
Yeah.
My word was microwave, because my grandmother had a microwave with these large buttons on it, that the 1 and the 0, because she was going blind.
Okay.
Well, she passed away, and I ended up having the microwave in my office, like as just to use until the kids burned popcorn in it and they ruined it. But so my word was microwave. So I don't know, a trick, more abstract.
I think that definitely works. Just imagery in general, I think really allows kids to express themselves.
So programming is probably one of the biggest things about preparing your band for a festival. So let's go for like non-competitive. You're going for a rating. You guys are in the audience. What are people missing? What are they doing well? Like that whole process. I'm curious.
We were talking about this on the way over. Just the things that we tend to say over and over and over again, because it can be a long day, and so there are certainly. Do you want to go? I was doing a lot of talking.
Oh, you can start.
Is play dynamics, is that one of them?
Yeah, no. I try to stay away from play dynamics because I think that that's just the go-to for most directors, that like, okay, we got to make sure we're playing soft here and loud. Now, I will say 95% of the time, your band can play softer.
Yep.
Like they just can. So, pushing the ensemble to play softer. I would say, I have done a lot of work and research and presentations on just this idea of clarity in an ensemble. It's not anything new. Most of what I had or I've talked about, I've stolen from somebody else. But the idea of teaching your students how to play a specific articulation all the same way does wonders for the way in which the piece is going to sound. Just because you know all the notes and all the rhythms and you think everybody's sort of playing short, well, if they don't have a very good idea of what short is, what long is, etc., then none of it's going to match and it's not going to sound clear. So I think I say that quite a bit. And the other thing I always end up having to say is that releases are just as important as entrances. So everyone's always worried about coming in on time. And a lot of people aren't worried about cutting off together
Mhm.
or like how long is that final note? Is everybody sustaining the end of the phrase the same way? Those are some easy fixes that really change how the group sounds. So, I mean, those are kind of my 3 big ones, I would say, that I'm always talking about, I think. What about you?
I don't know. I don't know what the things are that I always say in that situation. I'm not sure if I have. I mean, I'd have to stop and think about that. It might be the same sorts of things. I think there are some things that could help a lot of groups that I maybe don't always talk about in the moment because
You don't want to overstep your place.
well, yeah, you don't know the situation for any group, like where they come from, how far they've come, the problems they're trying to overcome, and that sort of thing. But there's some really basic issues that can, I guess, in some ways, almost ruin anything else you try to do. And unfortunately, like picking the wrong music, instrumentation. And there was a time where you didn't dare go to contest if you didn't have the right number of alto clarinets.
Right.
It's not that way anymore. But having a good sound depends on having a certain number of all kinds of instruments, and it is a hard balance because you want to find yourself in a situation where you're like, I'm not telling every kid what they have to play, but you also want them to understand that we want to sound good, and part of that, not everybody can play quarterback, not everybody can play left tackle, whatever it is, it can't all be the same thing. And so that immediately has an impact, and then you have to spend time countering that.
That might be something people start thinking about more, because in the last couple of years it's been just keep playing, and that's what we care about. But
for sure,
maybe we get back to that.
Yeah, and I guess in some ways probably our comments are all 2 years old because we haven't been really. You did a little judging
last year,
judging,
yeah. And I would say, you made me think of something. The other thing that I always talk about, and it's something that I used in my teaching a lot when I taught high school, was that there's a really, I don't know, preconceived stereotype out there that anyone who plays clarinet 2-3 or trumpet 2-3 or alto 2 or like second, third trombone, like those are the weaker players, and because of that mindset, they don't think they matter as much. And so that obviously results in a lack of confidence in their playing a lot of times. And so when I hear groups play, one of the very first things I'll talk to them in clinic, if I've noticed that there's no depth to the sound, that it's very top heavy or very just like top voices, is that your 2-3s matter way more than your principals. Yeah, the principal is going to float over the top no matter what. And whether you mix up the parts, like sometimes your top player doesn't always play that, or you just change the mindset in your group that just because you play second clarinet's more important sometimes than first clarinet. And you're you're responsible for creating a depth to the sound that's going to be a heck of a lot more powerful than a top heavy or bottom heavy sound. So
I think everybody listening could understand that, but getting the kids to understand it. A good way you could do that is say there was a 3-part chord. Third had the root, the second had the third, and the first had the fifth of the chord. Then teaching them that if the second part was a B flat rather than a B natural, it changes it to a minor chord, right? Times where their note, if it's different or not there, totally changes everything.
And if we were to think of just balancing the chord,
right.
You're going to be like, hey, third clarinet, like you're going to play louder, like play. Yeah.
If the chord is built that way, then the first and second players should be listening to the third.
Right. Exactly. So giving them more power in the group, I think can only result in a better overall sound.
Okay. That's a different topic in some ways, but understanding that every person in that room is responsible equally for the success of that group, and that's a hard thing. But I think again, in some ways that goes all the way back to the score study thing. Like the director knows the score and can look at the chord and say immediately, first you need to be listening to third clarinet's playing your note there. Okay, that's where the ears are going. Which and that's probably one of the things I talk about more than anything in judging situation is listening.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to each other, what they should be listening for, who they should be listening to, how they should be working together. And that talks about some of the articulation things you're talking about, matching those sorts of things. So just listening is a huge thing for all sorts of elements in a performance. So
have we thoroughly discussed that topic?
I think
Sure.
so. I mean, those are
You
my. I could
go on.
talk for hours on that topic, but no, I think that for the most part, band directors are doing a great job on what they have and what they are given and the opportunity. I mean, so many of these groups get very minimal rehearsal time. They don't see them, and they're doing the best that they can. This is just us kind of nitpicking, things that in an ideal situation, if you had the opportunity and the time to pick one thing that we talked about, well, okay, maybe I'll think about releasing things together. Maybe I'll tell them like, okay, let's mark it in our part that we're all going to play all the way to 3, but I think that at the end of the day, everyone's doing the best they can and with what they have.
For sure.
So what are some common threads as you go around the country and you see like the really good programs? What are some things that those programs have in common?
Well, you travel a heck of a lot more than I do.
I have answers for this one.
Yeah.
This is just personal opinion, and I wish there was a clear answer, because then we'd all know what to do, But I've kind of become convinced, and I'm starting to get old. So maybe I can say this and have some semblance of experience behind it. Private lessons, I think, are enormous. And even, and all the things I'm about to say, I think it's easy sometimes to be like, well, I can't do that where I live, And I teach in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody to teach private lessons. And yet I've met directors that find ways around that. They have the seniors teaching the lessons to the 5th and 6th graders, Okay, and maybe there's some wrong information that goes through that way sometimes, but there's also some pretty awesome mentoring things that makes those seniors think differently, and that one-on-one thing starts to build something for that program. It would be awesome if our kids were all studying with the local symphony players and all that sort of thing, but that's not reality.
Right.
But finding ways to make that happen,
at least getting direct instruction on their specific instrument rather than just like, this is what, because teaching a band is very different than teaching the 4 flutes, in a direct lesson.
It's impossible to teach that stuff
right.
in a large group, and so many of us have to do it that way, and that's unfortunate. I think vertical teaching, not in every great program I've seen, but it's in a lot of them.
What do you mean by that?
Like team teaching, essentially.
Where like you're working with all levels, and I might be the head person with the 2nd band at the high school, and then in the afternoon I'm going to go assist with the 8th grade band, and then I'm going to teach beginning percussion lessons in the late afternoon. For a whole bunch of reasons, it allows you to teach to your skill set, and there's a camaraderie, a morale. Like, it's hard when it's just you, when you feel like you're working together and you're on the same page. And that kind of leads to the other thing, or another thing. Like I said, I have an answer for this one. I think the best programs have a curriculum. They have something from start to finish, and they can trace, like, in 5th grade, we want kids doing this, and we're going to build that skill set this way. And I know, again, I taught in my district that I taught in was a high school district. There were 3 high schools in the district, and I got to know my middle school feeder programs, like who was coming to us, and they were great, but there was no like cohesion, because they were part of even 2 other districts separate from each other, so they never met. And so that makes it a lot harder, and I know a lot of folks face that. But I think that's one of the keys, really, is to have that kind of thing in place where you know what you're trying to do. And I think of the best programs understand that kids want to be part of something good. And I say that because there's sometimes I hear folks like, well, we're doing this piece, I don't really like it, but the kids, I need to keep something fun in here for the kids. But it's only fun if it's good. Why is this high school really good at tennis, and this high school is really good at wrestling, and this high school is really good at theater, and this high school is really good at band? Well, they have great teachers there that are dedicated to what they do, and they put out a good product, and kids want to be part of that. They're drawn to that, and it doesn't matter what that is. And so I think that's a great way to kind of approach what we do, is to like think about creating something that's a great experience for them. You know,
one thing you taught me when I was here was a sense of urgency. I think that's part of it too. That would be one of my takes, is that, so like in one of your rehearsals, you'd say, okay, I have 100 minutes and I'm going to use all 100 minutes the entire time, that by X, Y, and Z, by rehearsing quickly and doing this, and this. But then if you think about, I have 100 rehearsals with 100 minutes, like how can I use every day and every rehearsal and blah, 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 blah. So many people don't utilize that with that sense of urgency. They think, oh, it's the beginning of the year, or it's the beginning of the rehearsal, or whatever. I remember thinking, I saw a clinic at Midwest once where they said something like, oh, here are the top 20 things you do to waste time in rehearsal. Things about like sharpening pencils and not passing music out ahead of time, and like all the things that some of us have.
Announcements.
Right, yeah, like, all the things. And she said,
I totally did that.
You know, and she said, oh, and here, let's time it. And all of these, if you did 3 of these, this takes up 3 minutes. And by the end of the year, you've lost 400 minutes of, and it's like,
absolutely.
Whoa, that's a big
an eye
deal.
opener there, yeah.
So that,
and
like,
I totally wasted some time this morning in rehearsal. I'm guilty.
But
you know?
there are some times where you waste time, but it's not wasting time. It's like team building or intentional time. But
I think we have a lot of, I don't know, daily procedures that I think directors can really think out of the box about. I had I watched a session once, and it was, who was that, King Philip? Peter Tileston. He did a session at Mass Allstate when I was teaching, and he talked about his routine, and he basically went through the routine with his band in front of us in this clinic, and basically everyone gets in the room, they all start warming up on their own, and Peter would stand there, and then he would get up on the podium and he would go 3, 2, 1, fist, and everyone would play a concert F, and then he would release them, and then they would start their breathing exercises. There was no like, all right, stop playing, blah, 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 let's talk about the mattress sale, and let's talk about that. None of that. And so that is one of I did that for the last like 6 years of my teaching, was that I never talked at the beginning of rehearsal. And then I wrote all the announcements on the board, and that if something really had to be like a reminder, I would set my clock at the very end. We would do the end, and I'd stop and we'd be like, okay, don't forget to be at the football game by 6:00 tonight in your uniform. Any questions? No.
There's also a great app for that called Remind.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, I've been out of public school teaching for 8 years now. So like, it's so much easier now. Like you can just, but I think that being open to changing your routine, seeing what works, what doesn't. And I think I tell student teachers this all the time. How many things can you get accomplished in this amount of time? Like think about it as a game. Like, how many things can you fix? How many things can you teach? How many things can you like effectively do in this space during this time? And if you challenge yourself like that, you can be a heck of a lot more productive, and your students are going to learn a lot more. There
was one time where you told me that the good programs you see, the band directors are never happy.
That's true.
You said that?
I probably
did. But you didn't mean it in a happy with life.
Right.
I guess the better word is we're never satisfied.
It's never good enough.
Like you're always wanting to grow. Yeah.
There's never a that was good enough moment. Yeah.
Well,
there's always something more you can do. Well, I think it's too easy. I know it happens
when
to me.
When performing or when just
in
like
general.
running your program. Okay.
Oh, that was a great concert. However, next time we're going
to get better at this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Sometimes you're going to get worse at it because your kids are graduating. It's just what it is.
That's true.
But I don't know. I know that there are certain things that 2/3 of the way through the rehearsal process, I think I just allow myself to say, well, that's probably as good as that's getting, when it's not. And I need to always, that's a for me thing. I don't know if that applies to anybody else, but yeah. I need to always constantly remind myself that, no, we can still improve that. We can still improve that. there's always ways to make things better.
One of the things I think is important is teaching kids to do the little things right. Like John Wooden, the coach, would always teach the players to put on their socks a certain way. They just won the championship 3 months earlier. Now they're putting on their socks all together.
Mm-hmm.
So they wouldn't, so they would be able to play correctly. So things like procedures that you can have them do exactly how you want, the attention to detail then makes bigger things, which helps your program excel.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
So we were talking about pet peeves earlier. And I actually didn't
have to be yours.
I didn't bring any to this meeting. So I think Lyndsay, maybe
I have some pet peeves.
Yeah.
I'll give you my 2 pet peeves. How about that? My first pet peeve has to do with actually rehearsing. I think, and this is my own personal opinion, although it is supported by many colleagues of mine, but I used to never tune my group really until I was satisfied with their tone quality. And there's always room to get better, but I think that we worry so much about things being in tune when the fundamental issue is most of your students are playing on instruments that are going to naturally be pretty much in tune, okay, with some pitch tendencies like here and there. But if they're playing it incorrectly, then they're not going to be playing in tune. And so my pet peeve is that I will go and watch directors, especially of like younger middle school bands, that will spend 10 minutes, 12 minutes going around the room with that tuner and making sure the B flat is in tune when it's like, wait, I mean, your trumpet player can barely speak a note out. Why are we tuning this? Let's focus on this. And it's going to be a whole heck of a lot easier to teach pitch and intonation when they can actually make a fundamental sound.
Have you ever heard a group with great tone that wasn't in tune? It's hard.
It's hard. I mean, yes, but I mean, and when we say in tune, I mean, we're all going to have moments where something's off. And so the people with the best tone typically have less of those moments, or can at least.
I mean, if I can interrupt for a second, I think going back to what makes a good program, that's another one.
Mm-hmm.
They prioritize that.
Yes. Tone above all else.
Tone above rhythm.
Everything. Everything. Yeah.
If the tone sounds good, we'll forgive all sorts of other things.
And everything else will come easier. Intonation will be easier. Yeah. Articulation will be clearer. Like there's a whole host of things that happen because of good tone. So, I think if directors are going to take anything out of this, like just give them good role models, give them good listening examples, and know that the tendencies of the horn or the instrument.
And tone is one of those things you can actually just ask for, and it gets better.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I say, can we do that again with a better sound or better tone? And all of a sudden it's better. Mm-hmm. It's like, how easy is that? One of the best teachers I teach with is named Alan King, who's a brass teacher. And he always says, kids, whenever you warm up the first minute or two, just spend it listening to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
How do you sound that day? What would you rate yourself? Just the act of listening to yourself when you first start on your long tones, whatever, is huge. Because if they're listening, they're going to play with better tone. They're going to play in tune.
My other pet peeve, which seems now that I'm thinking about it fairly irrelevant to this podcast, because if you're listening to a podcast, then you actually value getting better. So maybe it's kind of a moot point. Is that it? Yeah, good. But I think there's a lot of band directors or just teachers that have been doing it for so long that they feel like that's just the way I'm going to do it. And I think one of my pet peeves is that folks that just don't want to be like lifelong learners, that don't want to try something new. And you see that in programming, you see that in teaching approach, you see that in all different kinds of ways. But making sure that you're always trying to get better, or you're always trying to stay relevant, or, understanding students of 2022, any of those things, and don't just get stuck in your ways. So that would be my pet
like the quote I use for this: that when you're green, you're growing; when you're ripe, you rot.
Yeah.
You know who said that?
No. Who?
Ray Kroc, the guy who used McDonald's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that was his biggest thing. If you're green, you're growing. That's why I named it the Growing Band
It's
Director
perfect.
Podcast.
See, one of my that's good. I think
we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, we are.
Well, this has been fun.
Thank you for having us. It
Yeah,
has
it's
been
good to see you.
fun.
Thank you
I
for
feel like
coming
we
out
could
here.
talk forever,
Yeah.
but thank
We're
you for
at
having me.
UNH at
Yeah.
the
Gro-
new Boysen
The
office.
growing band director on the road.
On
the
the
road.
road.
On the road podcast. This is a whole new thing.
Yeah.
Where are you going next?
Home.
I mean, where's your next podcast? You gonna do one from like Florida
Hawaii
now,
or
Hawaii?
Florida? You gotta
There we
change.
go. Yeah.
No, the next one's on Zoom, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll
John
work too.
Mastriani
Nice.
from University of
Oh,
Connecticut is going to
nice.
do one with us, Jeff and
Excellent.
I.
Cool.
But I think next week is going to be some Christmas music we're going to release. Well, so and we're doing it in September. I wanted to give people a couple weeks to like figure out what they're doing now. But then if you do it in November, it's too late.
Too late.
October, it's kind of getting. So people don't have to listen to it, but I
That's
enjoy putting
true.
it together.
What was always my go-to?
You like the Polar
The
Express thing.
Polar Express. Awesome. Put that in the podcast.
Who's the arranger?
I don't know. I'll text
I already
you.
did the podcast. It just
Oh.
has to be released. But there's one that's called Christmas at the Movies, and it has Polar Express in it.
Oh.
And it's really good.
Oh, the Polar Express. I mean, you got to be good. Like, it's for one of your top bands, but
Okay.
it's
You could do
kicking.
it though.
That.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, this has been fun.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. See you later. We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.